Liberia has said it will receive up to 1,200 foreign nationals deported from the US. The deportees will include Africans as well as people from South America and the Caribbean. This is one of the largest transfers of people to a third country since the Trump administration began carrying out mass deportations. Now, as part of an unprecedented crackdown on immigration, the US government has been ending protection status given to refugees and asylum seekers, as well as immigrants, paving the way for people to be removed from the US. Now, in order to carry out the deportations, the US has signed bilateral agreements with a number of third countries. Now, the details of the deals have generally not been made public, but it is reported the Trump administration has coerced these countries with threats of visa bans, tariffs and other trade restrictions, and cuts to aid and funding for health and other key sectors. Now, 14 African countries have signed these deals. They include Burundi, Cameroon, Cape Verde, the Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eswatini, Ghana, Liberia, Libya, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, South Sudan, and Uganda. In a moment, I'll be talking to a litigator working on behalf of some of the deportees. But first, this report from DW correspondent Blaise Eyong in Cameroon. He met asylum seekers deported from the US who told him about the ordeal they experienced.
These three women are members of Ghana's LGBTQ+ community who fled persecution in their homeland and arrived in the US in 2024. Immigration took them into custody, and they were granted legal protection that prevented US authorities from sending them back to Ghana. Instead, they were deported to Cameroon this January. Zainab, not her real name, recounts how she was put on a plane, shackled and in chains.
You couldn't move, and it felt like we had committed some kind of crime, like example terrorism, and I felt like a terrorist because I mean, what on earth did I do to be shackled like that? Both hands and feet. I can't even move. I just came to the United States for safety. I didn't expect that at all.
Zainab is among 36 migrants who've been deported from the US to Cameroon as part of Trump's controversial third country deportation agreement so far. None of them have any ties to Cameroon.
We are not criminals. We entered America for us to be safe. If you were safe in our country, we don't believe you'll go to America to go and seek asylum. And this is so heartbreaking because you can't treat human beings like this. We are treated like we are slaves. We don't have life anymore. And Cameroon is not a safe country.
For these migrants, they cannot return to their home countries because they fear for their lives. Here in Cameroon, they are also not welcome. Faced with this dilemma, many simply do not know what to do.
For the first 2 months, the deportees were detained in a government compound in Cameroon's capital, Yaoundé. They were only allowed out after they went on a hunger strike. Even now, though they can go out, they have to be back by sundown. They are not allowed to work, and their asylum request has not yet been approved. Fru Joseph is their lawyer.
You cannot send somebody to harm that they're fleeing from. And so that's the concern with this special group of people, because they're not only vulnerable, they are doubly victimized because they're running away from a country that has persecuted them, and then now they're being sent to a country they do not know that still has the possibility of persecuting them. That makes it even doubly dangerous.
Since President Donald Trump returned to the White House, his administration has deported thousands of migrants. The details of the agreement between Cameroon and the US remain secret. But according to a New York Times investigation, Washington withheld a $30 million payment to the UN Refugee Agency in Cameroon, only releasing it after the country agreed to accept deportees. Evis Ngolengole is a member of Cameroon's ruling party and a former minister.
As friends and as good partners, if America has the need to deport some that it seeks to deport and wants to pass through Cameroonian territory, in a relationship of partnership of mutual respect, Cameroon has no reason to say, no, my borders are closed. No, because the relationship between the two countries is based on the principles of open borders, no frontier.
As night falls in Yaoundé, these deportees are once again about to spend another night full of uncertainty.
I'd absolutely have no one to rely on in this country. It's very terrifying.
With countries like Cameroon willing to take in deportees from the US, more people are expected to find themselves stuck in a land they never wanted to be in.
Now, in an update to the story, Cameroon is now seeking to send Zainab and the other deportees back to their countries of origin. Lawyers representing them have started legal proceedings to stop the Cameroonian government from repatriating them to their home countries, where they say their lives are in danger. But now, for more on the deportation agreements the US has struck with countries in Africa, we've invited Beatrice Njeri from the Global Strategic Litigation Council. This is an international NGO that specializes in refugee and migrant rights. Welcome to DW News Africa, Beatrice. So, as we're hearing, Cameroon now wants to send the deportees from the US back to their countries of origin. What do the agreements signed with the US say about whether or not countries like Cameroon have to keep the deportees that they've accepted from the US?
Okay, I'd like to begin by saying that most of the agreements we have had access to in their short forms are very vague in the responsibilities of the receiving countries, and we do not have full access of the agreements. These agreements are also kept very secret from the public eye, and therefore we do not know what commitments the receiving countries have made to the US with regards to retaining or sending the people received onwards.
Understood. Now, your organization has made an intervention in Equatorial Guinea. Can you tell us about that case and the avenues that you are pursuing?
In June, we filed a case against the state of Equatorial Guinea at the African Commission. This is because we felt we had the lawyers in Equatorial Guinea, together with the other co-counsel organizations that we're collaborating with, we felt that we had exhausted all the possible domestic remedies, legal remedies possible in Equatorial Guinea, and therefore we had no option but to move to the African Commission in order to seek protection and justice for the people who are some who are still currently detained in Equatorial Guinea, and some who had then been refoulement or returned back to countries where they face danger.
Yeah, Beatrice, you mentioned that you're intervening because people are detained, essentially, and that really prompts my next question. Why are the deportees, people who are not criminals, being detained when they arrive in the third countries that they've been deported to from the US? Is this even legal?
Absolutely not legal. It is a blatant violation of international human rights law. These are people who have protections in their country, in the US. They were fleeing from danger in their country, from their countries of origin. And most of the receiving countries had committed in the few agreements to respect their human rights. So what they are doing upon receipt, then detaining them under heavy military guard or in maximum prison facilities is, of course, a violation of their human rights and is not legal. We do not know why these receiving countries have chosen this mode of dealing with the people who have these received. And their detention conditions are horrible in most of these countries, and it is also the conduit with which they use to intimidate, frustrate, and harass the people detained in order to force them to agree to returning to their countries of origin where they may face danger.
Oh, Beatrice, can you say a little bit more about those conditions of detention?
For example, in Equatorial Guinea, we have people who have been detained there for 9 months since November, others about 7 months beginning January. And what we have heard from our interactions with these detainees who we speak to on various occasions quite regularly is that they do not receive adequate food, they do not have enough personal hygiene products, including toothbrushes, toothpaste, and even basic hygiene products, no sanitary products for women. And the Equatorial Guinea government or the people who are guarding them at the hotel, who they believe to be police officers, keep telling them that they're not the responsibility of Equatorial Guinea, that they were brought here by the US, and thus the US should take responsibility for whatever they need. We have also seen high levels of medical neglect. They have various medical needs that have been neglected by, for example, the Equatorial Guinea authorities. There are people who have been received and had limited supply of medicines. Some have conditions varying from bipolar to HIV infections, diabetes, hypertensive people with high blood pressure challenges, and all these people have not received adequate treatment.
Yeah, Beatrice, I guess if we're sort of taking a step back at this, and you work in this space, that's why I'm prompted to ask you the question. Not everybody, but a bulk of the people that are being deported by the United States or from the United States do happen to be Africans. And if, you know, a significant amount of the countries that have signed up to these partnerships with the United States are African countries, doesn't it sort of beg the question then about whether or not we in Africa should be looking at what we're doing in terms of how the continent is receiving fellow Africans, and perhaps what can be done to accept people who are being denied the right to stay in the United States and in other Western countries. We have to point out that in Europe as well, immigration policy, asylum policy is being severely restricted.
Africa already shoulders the greater responsibility of protection of asylum seekers. We do know from UNHCR statistics that African countries host about 65 to 70% of people seeking asylum or people who are seeking asylum go to their neighboring countries. So there's a good reason that the 30% also are seeking refuge in countries other than Africa. And it is their right to do so. People have a right to seek asylum where they feel safest, as well as the agency of asylum seekers to seek safety where they feel they would mostly be safe. There are, for example, groups of African asylum seekers who may not feel safe in any African country. For example, people who are LGBT, have LGBT claims or have fled their countries because of LGBT persecution would find it hard to find safety in any other African country, because most of the other African countries have same level of danger, if not worse, than their countries. The other reason is that apart from that, Western countries are not shouldering their responsibility or their level of shared responsibility for this, for refugee protection, basically. And that burden has been left heavily on the global south, while it should be equally shared. And so we are seeing this externalization agreements as a form of for example, rewriting the protection laws and system and how it has worked. The Global Compact on Refugees does prescribe how shared responsibility ought to look like, and it is not by proximity only, that refugees should not only seek protection by proximity to countries. Africa also has its own challenges, and we do think that the Western countries should bear more responsibility on the protection of asylum seekers, because they have created this problem through, perhaps if you go like deeper into historical or wider exploration, so through colonization, through fueling of conflict of wars in the Gulf countries, Sudan, etc. So there is greater responsibility for why people are being forcibly displaced in the person, and that responsibility should be borne by the Western countries, because they have instigated it and therefore should also bear the responsibility of protecting people.
All right, that's Beatrice and Jerry from the Global Strategic Litigation Council. We appreciate your insights, Beatrice. Thanks very much.